All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our special meeting. This is Parks and Waterways, April 5th, 2023. The time is 2 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. Are there changes to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, I have some housekeeping to do first, and then we'll get into it. This meeting's been scheduled for 1 hour. I'll do my best to keep us on track. How many people here in the audience have never submitted written email or correspondence to the commissioners on this topic, nor have you testified at a public hearing or meeting? Can you stand up? Okay, yes, have not, have never given us. Okay, thank you. This is a public meeting which can be alluded to as a spectator sport, not a participatory event like we have with public hearings. There have been dozens of hours of testimony heard in person over email, telephones, and written letters. This meeting is for the commissioners to decide how to proceed in light of testament from KCSO, the Waterways Advisory Board, staff, and members of the public. If there is time for public comment, these are the rules of engagement. Whoever has not sent us correspondence or appeared in person will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. All comments will be civil and respectful, address the Board of County Commissioners and not the audience, address issues and not persons. Refrain from applause as it does interfere with us being able to hear the speaker, but you can raise your hands if you're in agreement with the speaker. When asked by a commissioner to stop, please do so promptly or face being asked to leave the meeting. If repeated requests by a commissioner are disregarded, the meeting will be recessed or adjourned depending on the severity of the disruption. So with that, Bruce, did you want Jamila to speak kind of about how the ordinance will be amended, or are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I do have a statement, but I'll wait until that moment is correct.
Okay. I also have a statement, but I don't know. Bill, do you have a statement as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't.
You don't.
All right, so I don't know. I guess I'll just offer who wants to go first.
Kent.
I'm sorry, who's just joined us?
Edward and Susan Kent, Post Walls.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you could keep yourself muted, that would help us hear. Thank you.
I'm happy to start.
Okay.
This is my statement on the proposed changes to the Spokane River Waterway Ordinance. Since 2013, I've watched the Spokane River become more and more congested. The excessive wake ordinance is no doubt one of the more passionate subjects within Kootenai County. In 2021, the Kootenai County Board of County Commissioners implemented their own excessive wake ordinance 2021-63 to protect property and address safety issues on the river. That's why last summer I went out myself on a wake boat with a rangefinder and saw firsthand the different types of wakes generated using various ballasts. I watched how passing boats, sometimes much smaller, would toss parked vessels just as much and in some cases more than a wake boat. Further, I spent a lot of time on the shore watching boats travel the river to see the kinds of wakes that were being generated. It is clear to me that this county is growing faster than what this community is accustomed to. The rapid growth has affected every aspect of our way of life, including how we all can enjoy the Spokane River. That growth has led to immense congestion, so much so that a large percentage of local residents avoid using the river on weekends, including myself. I believe excessive congestion, not excessive wakes, is the public safety issue. I believe the current ordinance is redundant with state statute. Few people acknowledge the Idaho Safe Boating Act already addresses protecting property and public safety. In section 67-7016, it reads, "Any person who operates any motorized vessel on the waters of the state of Idaho without due caution and circumspection and in a manner as to endanger or be likely to endanger any person or property shall be guilty of grossly negligent operation and upon conviction shall be punished as provided in section 67-7033 Idaho Code." The sheer amount of traffic, by default, has created a property and public safety issue in my mind. This is why I am in support of passing a no-tow ordinance during the busiest times. It should begin Memorial Day weekend and restrict towing on the Spokane River Saturdays and Sundays from 12 noon to 6 p.m., including the July 4th holiday, and through Labor Day weekend. Further, I agree with our Waterways Advisory Board and Sheriff's Office to include a 150-foot no-tow zone from any structure or shoreline on the Spokane River. I believe that this will accomplish two objectives. It will reduce overall congestion, thereby increasing safety and reducing the likelihood of property damage on the Spokane River. It will also allow residents on the river to enjoy the river in ways that the excessive congestion may not currently allow for, including swimming, paddleboarding, kayaking, and other water activities. But there is a third objective. I believe that nobody should be on the Spokane River and wonder if he or she is breaking the law. The excessive weight ordinance did just that. Further, no law enforcement officer should be tasked with enforcing a law that is inherently subjective in nature. The law should be clear for everyone. This is why I support amending Resolution 2021-63 to remove the Spokane River from the excessive weight language and implementing a no-tow restriction on weekends between noon to 6 p.m., including the July 4 holiday, beginning Memorial Day weekend through Labor Day weekend, in its place, and at all other times include a 150-foot no-tow zone from any structure or shoreline on the Spokane River. Thank you.
Okay, Bill?
First of all, my apologies to everybody here. I am so tired of beating this dead horse. Every year we go like this, like this, like this, and it creates a lot of bad feeling. I've noticed that a number of wake boat organizations recommend to keep surfing 1,000 feet away from the shore. I don't think that's possible in the Spokane River. The Spokane River is such a unique river, and there are places where it may be 1,000 feet wide, but there are other places where there's no way for two boats to pass safely at high speeds. And jet skis, don't get me started, because jet skis are a hazard to everybody. Sorry if you own one, there's a place you can do that out in the lake. I'm comfortable with what Idaho Safe Boating Act says, which Bruce referenced, in a manner as to endanger or to be likely to endanger or any person or property. Those things shall be illegal. And that's where I stand. I'm not going to do I don't think we should, if we tow in 2 hours here and don't there, how do people keep that straight? I mean, it gets very complicated. I would like to see all wake boats in the lake and not in the river. That just to me makes a lot of sense. But that's just me.
Okay, thank you. Everybody is painfully aware that the Spokane River is a federal navigable waterway. It belongs to the people of the state of Idaho. When we start enacting some ordinances, we have to be careful that we're not going to come under scrutiny from the Coast Guard and what their regulations say when you're talking about that navigable waterway. We've spent 18 months or more trying to strike a balance with a tool that gave some property relief to property owners while ensuring recreational public has unfettered access to the waterways here. So my guess, we've probably spent over $200,000 in just time, okay? And so staff time, and that really, I think, is a burden for the rest of the taxpayers, honestly, because not all the taxpayers use Spokane River, but yet we've focused all this time and effort on there. The other thing that I wanted to point out is the tax dollars. There are no tax dollars used to enforce waterways ordinances. It is voters' dollars. So registration and the launch fees and things like that, that pays for KCSO's Marine Division. So in essence, when we enact something, we have to be very, very careful because we're using voter dollars to actually restrict their activity. So that is always weighing heavily in my mind. There's a couple questions that really still, they just haven't been answered. I've seen all these wake studies and everything, but yet they don't take place on rivers. So I've yet to hear of a study that shows the percentage of shoreline erosion caused by natural moving water, including high water events and ice and snow, versus the percentage of damage caused by boating. I haven't seen that. So you have a river that runs 365 days a year. I would say that you could condense usable days down to maybe 70, because by the time the river is slowed and comes up, and then by the testimony from most of the people, Saturday and Sunday are the majority of the damage, the majority of the usage happens. So I guess in my mind, I start doing the math and it's like, so people are claiming that all the damage is occurring in 128 hours. So that's 8 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday, 16 weekends. I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of skeptical there. I do agree with going back to state language. I think that is sufficient, and part of the issue with the current ordinance, the way it was written, which all of you are very aware that I didn't support the language in this ordinance or the previous one because it was problematic. It is not something that's not enforceable. Officers can issue tickets for all kinds of stuff, but they can't get convictions. So that, once again, wastes an incredible amount of time in our court system, which is already backed up. When I got here in 2019, the court system was growing at 6% rate, population was growing at a 3% rate. So once again, I think we have to be very, very careful when we're looking at enacting ordinances. So I would definitely go for repealing that language, going for the 150-foot no-tow zone. I would also ask that non-motorized try to use the no-wake zones and kind of like treat it like crossing the street. If there's no traffic, then, go back and forth on the river. But if you look at statistics, most waterway issues the deaths are non-motorized. The second deaths are jet skis. So if we're really talking about safety, then maybe we need to talk about the ones that are actually having the most problems. So I do not disagree that it's extremely congested. I go to Pend Oreille because if I can see the expression on your face, you're way too close to me, I want to not be able to really tell what color your boat is. So I have spent hours and hours on the river because of this issue. I've probably spent over 100 hours myself just on this topic because it's so incredibly important. I would not support the no towing on Saturday and Sunday because I still don't have numbers. I still do not have enough really to convict in a court of law that says no towing on Saturdays and Sundays is going to solve the problem. Yeah, it changes the problem, but not necessarily solves the problem. So I like a very, very slow approach, I guess, to regulation. So I think that the 150-foot no-tow zone is so 100-foot no wake, 150-foot no tow, and then changing the language to go back to the state where it's not just enforceable, but it's actually convictable. We can get convictions for that, and we're not wasting anybody's time. Beyond that, I think that's where I would go. Each of you is likely to leave here unhappy, and I understand that, but I do want you to know that the three of us have really considered this issue. And I think there was one other thing that I was going to mention. Part of the issue too with the river becoming so crowded are the encroachment permits. So people don't always think of it in this manner, but when you put your dock out there, you're actually taking away use of the river from the people of the state of Idaho who own that. So that's always something to consider when we're looking at something like this. So yeah, a lot of congestion, but if all the docks were gone, the congestion would be a lot less. So that is another factor that I've thought about over these past, really 4 years since I got here, but 3 years since we've really been trying to tackle this and get something reasonable. So I think from there, I would start the deliberation process. It sounds like the three of us are in agreement on the excessive lake language and replacing it with state law. Is that correct?
Well, it sounds like we're in agreement on the 150-foot no-tow
I think so, yeah.
and the 100-foot no wake.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
Which is actually state law, so I don't think we can change that if we wanted to.
yeah. You know, I'd like to just kind of make the argument a little bit more about the no-tow. You know, I think one of the challenges here is that not only do we have the residents who live here and the residents that live on the river, but we have residents that don't live here and come out here and use the river. And we're about to add a bunch of boats by the 95 bridge that people can rent and go up and down the river. I mean, we're going to have a lot more congestion. I'll never forget the time I was going down the river in my boat, and I witnessed a boat in front of me with a tube and small kids in it. And they were just going around in circles, figure eights and things like that, while 3 and 4 other boats were passing. And you know, that's really the main reason, along with the fact that many of the residents who live along the river who have these wake boats, they don't even take their kids out during this time. So I'm not even sure that there's a sacrifice on their end. I think the sacrifice is going to be with the folks who don't live here, who want to come over here, who want to use the river during the weekend, because that's where I think a lot of that congestion is coming from, and that creates, by default, the safety issue. So I'm going to try to vigorously debate this among the commissioners.
I would argue, though, that the safety issue would be shown in numbers. And I just don't have those numbers to back up this, in my mind, you know, doing away with all towing for those, 12 hours on the weekend.
Yeah. Well, you know, I understand that perspective, because what that really says is until something happens, until we have the numbers, should we act? And, you know, in a lot of situations, I can see where that's applicable. In this particular situation, I'm not so sure that I've met anyone who feels like they've truly given something up if we were to pass a no-tow from 12 to 6. If it was a different situation where people were lobbying hard, I don't want you to have a no-tow from 12 to 6. I'm giving up too much of my weekend to do that. Then I would be way more in your camp on that, Commissioner Duncan, when it comes to the numbers and things like that. But because I haven't heard that, and because the people I've talked with have been okay with that, and because of just what I've seen through my own observation, I just wonder if that's not a better place to start, and then we can adjust as it is. Because the reality is that no matter what this board ends up doing, I think it's safe to say that less than 50% of the people will be satisfied with us. And consequently, whatever we do, and I don't want to have to revisit this issue again and again, but if there are clear issues, and I know last year we had a lot of issues with folks getting, concerned about whether they were actually making an excessive wake or not, which I think that was just a bad way to write the ordinance. But in the end, I think it's really, I don't think people are giving up anything if we were to do that. And we know that there will be more congestion.
Sure. I just happen to hear from all the people who don't want towing restricted on the weekends, so I'll have to forward you those emails.
Yeah.
That's fine. Bill, what say you?
I'm happy with a state regulation, because I think if we ask Sheriff Norris to enforce that, he will.
One out of Coeur d'Alene.
Okay, who's ever on the line, if you could mute yourself, I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much.
And I don't think enforcement necessarily means giving somebody a citation. I think it means education. You stop people and you say, don't do this. This is not okay. You're violating state law. If you do it again, there'll be consequences. I think that's the way we should handle it. The river is like a road that changes widths, that people go different directions on. Most people on a road stay on the right-hand side, as they go forward. And boating, that's not necessarily the case. These people, a lot of them are not educated. They haven't had a safe boating course. And my understanding is we can't make them.
Yep.
But I would certainly charge a lot of money for out-of-state boaters, specifically Spokane. So they're going to have to really want to come here to pay that money. Our parking is congested, let alone and then the dangers. Let me say again, the jet skis. That was the one accident, I think, last year where somebody broke a bone, was on a jet ski. And I'm afraid there's worse that we're going to be in store for this year. It's more crowded.
I guess the only question is, Commissioner Brooks, are you leaning towards just the 150-foot no tow and the 100-foot no wake with no other modifications?
And
or
the state
well, that would okay.
law, yes.
Okay, and
That's
so and not having a no tow zone on the weekends.
I think it gets too confusing. How do people, I'm visiting from Keokuk, Iowa. How do I know what that means? I think we should do more signage too on the river. Let people know.
I agree with the more signage. I think, though, that there might be something in federal regulations about staying to the right. So it's not really a hard and fast rule. And I think that I can get that information to possibly put that. And I think the language is something all extent practicable. Avoid collisions, obviously, but in general, just stay to the right. And I think that's what boater education teaches anyway. So that might be something that we can add to the
Right.
ordinance, that language. So when the officers are doing their education, which they do, I think they give 7 or 9% or something of their stops actually end in tickets. So they do provide a great amount of education, and I appreciate that. I would be in favor of mandatory boater education. I got mine at 4 years old. I've been water skiing since I was 5.
But
So,
it's not legal that we make it mandatory, is it?
correct. No, we can't do that, but that's a state law. We would have to
I know.
yeah, and even the boating industry has gone to the legislature, and the legislature has not listened to them. So I'm not real hopeful in that part of it. So
Okay.
I just have concerns about it being the camel getting his nose in the tent if we go no towing. Because then now you're going to have complaints, okay, so you did Saturday, Sunday, but really we need to go Fridays, or, now we need to go Mondays, or we need to go 8 a.m. I just see it go. And
what about the other waterways in the county? There's a lot of places like Hayden Lake that I've gotten a number of emails from them saying, what about us?
Yeah.
What about us?
Well, today I think we're just addressing the Spokane River.
I know we are.
So,
It's just,
I'm less concerned about the camel's nose getting into the tent. Quite honestly, that's going to be incumbent upon the community to elect the kind of people to represent the policies that they want, because they can flip on a dime. Every 2 years, 2 commissioners are up for reelection, so it can flip that easily.
and usually does.
But, it's, my position is on the, I think that we're not giving up much for the residents here. Maybe for the non-residents, they're giving up. As far as coming over here, it's incumbent upon anyone who's not in this community to be aware of the laws here. It's not, it's just the way that is. And I do believe we need more signs. We don't have enough signs on the river for people to really understand what they should and should not be doing.
Yeah. I definitely see your point about the why wait till something happens, but what if nothing ever happens?
Well, we're getting into proving a negative here, and that's not an area that I would go into. I would be more open to saying, let's try it, and if the Waterways Board and the Sheriff's Office say, look, revisit this, it's not working, great. And that's going to happen either way.
Right. So speaking of Waterways Board, they actually had that on the table, and they decided, and these are the people that we rely on, obviously, to give us information, that they did not want a no-tow.
Yeah.
So they asked for the excessive wake language and then the 150-foot no-tow for main
Yeah.
structure. So, I mean, talking about taking things slow, I do understand the fact that you don't want to change laws every single year, but we wouldn't be here right now had it not changed last year. So we're at where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say let's do that 150-foot rule, giving the sheriff good ways to enforce it with the language, and then revisit it next year to say, okay, the 150-foot rule didn't work. We're still having major challenges. I don't know. I just rather go slow and steady and run the risk of changing things rather than if we do that 12 to 6, Saturday, Sunday, and 4th of July. So I would really limit it because June, half the time you can't get out on a boat on there anyway. And kids are still in school and all that stuff. So I would want to make it as narrow as possible. If we were to go there, then I would ask that we wouldn't touch it then for a couple summers.
Yeah.
So you can make that commitment. You have a 4-year term. I can make, a 2-year summer commitment.
Yeah. Well, look, I like the healthy debate here. I think that the beauty of a 3-member board is that one person will always be the deciding vote. And I think in this particular situation, Commissioner Brooks might have that honor.
Honor.
But either way, it seems like that's the way it's going to go. So, and that's the way the board works. And I'm fine with that.
So what would your motion sound like, Leslie?
Oh, gosh.
Well, come on
I
now.
hadn't even gotten that far. 15 pages, and I didn't bother to look at a motion. So I'm not making a motion,
Okay,
but I would say that we would amend ordinance 2021-63 to remove the excessive wake definition and replace it with state law language, and then that we would add the 150-foot no-tow to the Spokane River. And once again, folks, Coeur d'Alene, Hayden, Lower Twin, Upper Twin, they all remain the same as they are today. So they still have those buffers, and none of that changes. And I suppose that would be it.
well, before we dive in, I did get this thing sent to me by somebody who is in favor of wake boating, but it's from Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes. And right in the beginning, it's recommended by a consortium of these groups, boaters and non-boaters, 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet. I don't think is Spokane River 1,000 feet long?
600 wide.
I know. It kind of shuts it down on the Spokane River, and it should be, I think, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I would agree with that if you'd make that motion.
Okay,
Let's do it.
you sure?
Yeah.
I'm willing to entertain a few more.
I've said my piece. you know, and it's perfectly okay that we respectfully disagree with each other. That's the nature of this board.
So then what I would probably suggest, I think we have about 8 people in the audience who, and I don't know if anybody even wants to speak. I would entertain hearing from those folks that we've never heard from before. And then we've got a couple people on the phone line. I know a couple of them we have heard from before, but I'm not sure if anybody else has joined us that we have not heard from. So it is chairman's prerogative, but I would just
Sounds
ask.
good.
Okay. All right, so folks, if you have never written the Board of County Commissioners nor phone called us or testified in a public meeting or a public hearing, and you would like to speak right now,
And that's just for this subject matter.
just for
Yeah,
Spokane River, just for
Raise your
Spokane
hand.
River and the changes we're looking at, sir, you can just come right up here to podium. And then there's a device that you can push the button on. It'll turn green, and just state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Tom Yunt. I'm with the Hayden Lake Watershed Improvement District. And I just want to clarify to make sure I understood, Madam Chairman, that your change to the ordinance only affects the Spokane River and has no effect on those other lakes you mentioned a few minutes ago.
That is correct. So 2020-38 and 2021-63, where it talks about the other bodies of water, that remains in place. This is only regarding the language for Spokane River and the new tow zones or no towing zones.
Okay,
for Spokane.
thank you.
All right, folks. No one else in the audience? Okay. All right, folks on the phone, is there anyone on the telephone who has not corresponded with the county commissioners on this particular topic, whether in writing or in person, and would like to add comments? Okay. Sounds like, folks, that we have heard from many hundreds of people. I know personally I probably can add up about maybe 700 emails in the last 4.5 years. So, okay. You said you wanted me to make the...
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So Jamila, help me out with this, okay?
Sounds like, folks, that we have heard.
All right.
Commissioner Duncan,
Yes, who's this?
this is Edward Kent in Post Falls and Spokane River. What is the minimum no wake zone throughout the state of Idaho? You talked about the rules and regulations of Idaho, where we're returning to those. What is the minimum throughout the state of Idaho?
100-foot no-wake zone from any dock, structure, or shoreline. So in the other bodies of water, we've enacted more stringent regulations. And so that's what we are going to propose here too, is 100-foot no-wake, which is already state law, then another 50-foot, which would be no towing.
I read it was 200 foot, but I guess the reason why the Wake Boaters Association recommends 1,000 feet is just simply recognizing that the 300 to 500 pound wave coming at shore is just extreme, and I think this doesn't happen with ski boats.
Sure.
But ultimately,
and Mr.
when you
Kent?
talk about rivers, they have parallel flow, not perpendicular flow. So they're not exposed to that naturally. That you get that with lakes.
Mr. Kent,
Lane,
have
but
you
not
corresponded with the commissioners? I believe I have
Yes.
received several
I have
emails.
sent in an email,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so
thank you.
I had set aside time for those folks we had not heard from yet. So I have read your emails, and I appreciate your input. Thank you so much.
Understood. Thank you for your evidence-based approach.
All right, so I move.
I haven't ever commented or participated in any type of communication with the board and would like to speak if that's all right.
Your name, ma'am?
Regina Haug.
Okay.
I want to comment about the fact that 150-foot no-tow zone doesn't solve any problem as far as the issues on the water. In fact, it shortens the amount of space that everyone has. It makes the lakes, and of course this isn't affecting the lake, which I'm happy to learn about, but whatever's being done legally right now is very ineffective, and this is also going to be ineffective, in my opinion. I have lived on Hayden Lake since 1980, and I've watched it become completely unsafe and a very difficult place to recreate. And the boats that are being brought onto the lake, rivers and all that, as mentioned, are coming from elsewhere. And it's way out of proportion for the size of these waterways. And it's a new type of wake. And so, yeah, towing someone with a wake surf boat 150 feet from the shore is doing absolutely nothing. So for me, what you guys are doing is ineffective and a waste of time and a waste of $200,000. And I think the only solution is to have a no tow at all zones or time zones for people, because 150 feet is nothing. It's not going to work. And to be honest, it's not safe for regular people who are enjoying the lake. So these kind of crafts on the waterways in our county are infringing on the use of the people of Idaho who want to enjoy the lake, but don't have a $250,000 wake surf boat. And so it becomes just a playground for those few people who have those kind of vehicles and boats. And I think it's unsafe. And you guys should be erring on the side of the majority of the people who use the waterways, and you should be erring on the side of safety. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right. Last call. Anybody else on the telephone? Okay. I move that we strike the language from ordinance 2021-63, which is the excessive wake definition, and replace it with state law definition of excessive wake, and add a 150-foot no-tow rule to the Spokane River.
What about the no wake?
That's already in law. We don't need to change
Okay,
that.
okay.
We don't need to mention that.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Matari,
Nay.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, so what is going to happen is legal is going to go ahead and make those all pretty words. There may be a chance that we have more things to discuss once she gets into the specifics. Then it will be published in the newspaper. It will become effective 30 days from that publication. So thank you all, folks. I know that truly sorry that most of you are going to be recognize this as a no-win situation, and that we've done our best taking all the information into consideration. And you can choose to make the best of this outcome, or you can choose to be miserable because you didn't get your way, but that's your choice. And it's not an easy decision, and it's one I've spent years on. So thank you. Meeting adjourned.
I feel like saying.